Okay, we're going to starting Siman Kuf Ayin Vav. I didn't finish Siman Kuf Ayin Hey Bar Metzre, but Ot Chazon Lamayid. I don't know if we're ever going to get around to it, but it is what it is. Kyle is already in Kuf Ayin Vav, so that's what the shurim are going to be from. Kuf Ayin Vav begins, topic we'll call it of 12, 13 Simanim, Shutfim v'Shluchim. That's the set of these simanim. Shutfim is Kuf Ayin Vav through Kuf Pei Aleph, and Shluchim is Kuf Pei Beis through Kuf Pei Ches. It goes in a natural order, so we did Neyuchev Cheskas Karkois, then Cheskas Nazakim, then Shutfis Bekarka. Then you have Bar Metzre, which is a result of Shutfis Bekarka. And now that we're done with Shutfis Bekarka, we're moving to how to become Shutfim in businesses. As much as you think that there is dintaitis and these in Bar Metzres, those are short dintaitis, and usually the answer is you don't get the property, because that's, you already learned Bar Metzre, you already know it. Comes to the Shutfim is where a lot of big disputes happen because of lack of clarity what defines a shutfus and what is conditions of shutfus and how to divide a shutfus, and that is what these simanim mainly deal with, mainly Siman Kuf Ayin Vav. I want to give a brief introduction to Siman Kuf Ayin Vav, and then we will start with the actual shutfus, with actual halachas. We'll go through some of the main points that are discussed. The first point is, a shutfus is the definition of two people joining and becoming partners for profit and for loss, which means that both have to invest something to be able to get something out of it. It could be work investment, it could be financial investment, it could be property investment. Sometimes one person will give more money, one person will do more work, whatever the conditions of their shutfus is, but a shutfus always happens when both people put in something, and therefore both people get something out of it. There's obviously the beginning of the siman is what defines the beginning of a shutfus. Do you need a kinyan? Is it enough by having a conversation? Is it starting to do business together? Is it starting to do business together with one person's money or somebody else's money, etc.? And those are all what it is. But the first point that it is that we first have to define how does somebody become a shutef with somebody else. That is the beginning of the siman. How does one person become a shutef with somebody else? And in shutfus, like in a lot of other things in Mishpat, whatever the minhag hamadina is, takes precedence over a lot of other things. So if there is something which according to halacha you would need a kinyan, and in minhag medina it's enough to make a contract or enough to put in money together, that will work as a kinyan, as opposed to other things where you can't get away without doing a kinyan. Over here, shutfus is financial, and in financials, whatever the agreement is between you to do, if the agreement is in accordance with Din to Malchusa, with Minhag Medina, it will work. The next important point in shutfus is each person has to pull his weight. You can't have one person not doing what he's supposed to do. That also goes into Minhag Medina. That means if somebody and that somebody has to look at it not as an employee, but as a partner, which means an owner. It means you care for it, you take responsibility for it. There are certain things that if you will not be responsible for if you're not a shutef, and you would be responsible for if you are a shutef, certain damages, whether there's a certain discussion if a shutef is chayav begram or not. Famous nesivos, that's in a bunch of places in Mishpat, about the schayvus of a shutef in grama. When does it become? Why? Because a shutef has more responsibilities for yourself. Certain things that you do for on behalf of the shutfis. Obviously, because you're a shutef, you have to do this consultation with the other person. Things that you do without consultation becomes another discussion later on in the siman. Do you become responsible only for When could you say that if I did something without consultation, a risky venture, do I say the losses are obviously only on the person who did it without consultation? The profits becomes a discussion, because I could say, I did a risky investment, I didn't want to talk with you, you didn't want to be part of this risky investment. Somebody's involved in something which is very risky, smuggling or whatever it is, and he's not interested in being part of it because liability is liability. So I say, in America, if you have no skin in the game, you have no profit. So if you have no liability as a shutif, you're also not going to have any profits from it. And the other shutif could, but that's not exactly what Shulchan Aruch says. According to Shulchan Aruch, if I use the mammon shutfus to do a risky venture, there are many times when, if there's profit, the other shutif will get from it. Only for losses, I would become responsible. Now, if somebody relies on the other person, one shutif says, I don't run the business, I'm putting in the finances. You're the one that's running the business. Then he's relying on him, he's relying on his judgment, and then it becomes, this is where arguments would become something called a managing partner. That means you have the silent partners, managing partners, active partners, and sometimes the managing partner could make decisions in the operating agreements you'll have. Up to a certain amount of money you can invest without asking. Maybe you could invest, so let's say he could invest up to $100,000 without asking, and then he comes and he invests. And this was a risky venture. You relied on him. If he did it not negligent, then the other person would be responsible for it also, the other shutef, even though he could say, well, I didn't know you're going to do such a stupid thing. The answer is, you took me as a partner, you put me as a managing partner, yes, I will do risky things. If you want to have a non-risky investment, go invest in government bonds. That's not what you wanted to do. So obviously, you wanted it to be with my risky involvement. And there's obviously levels of risk. What's considered negligence? Obviously, smuggling drugs is not considered a risky investment that somebody is willing to do. Some people might, but I'm talking about in general. Then there is if somebody does. Then there's a whole discussion. If someone owns a building, ishbiach, if he invests his own money into the property, if he invests other money into the property, when you have to split up the partnership, what goes out first? If I bring into the partnership, if I have a business, we go partnership in a business, and I have a truck company, and I bring in some trucks from my company into this company, and it's not that I put it in as an investment, but rather for the use of the business. Obviously, things that I brought in, I could take out first when we split profits, and then profits come out, payment for the things that I put in. Obviously, when there's revachim, each one takes back the things that he put in first. Expenses that were used for the shutfus is a whole discussion. Paiskim also, and also starts in Shulchan Aruch, how much expenses one shutuf could charge. There is a tshuva, which I don't remember offhand, now I'm talking Baal Peh. If a shutuf went and had to buy expensive clothing to be able to get as far as tshuva, I'm not sure, I don't remember now. To buy very expensive clothing to be able to seal a business deal. As you don't know because none of you are in business, but I was told, almost 30 years ago by a big gvir that told me that when you walk into a business meeting, they don't look at your suit, they look at your watch and they look at your shoes. So you have to make sure that those are, at least then that's how it was. Take a look, and he says that's why a lot of times you see in business meetings, the first thing a person will do is do this, and to look at his time, so that way the other person could see what watch he's wearing. So you have to make a business deal with a big bank, and you have to spend $20,000 on a watch that matches the business deal. Could you then charge it to the shutfus or not? What? Kenzan, you could rent it. Not everything that. Yeah, but the expense of renting it is for sure the shutfus. The expense of buying it becomes the shutfus. Okay, then afterwards, obviously the shutf that bought it can't keep it for himself. It becomes part of the shutfus. But there is a question is right now the person doesn't have $20,000 to buy the watch. He bought it for the shutfus because the other person say, I don't have to pay to refund you half of what it was, or you're stuck with it because you purchase it. All this is before. Then comes division of shutfus. How do you divide the partnership? I said certain things that were invested, and then comes another question: how do you divide the profits? Does it go based on how much you invested? Does it go based on what you agreed upon? What happens if you didn't agree on something? Someone put in $750,000, someone put in $250,000, and then comes a lot of profits, and there was no decision mechatchila how to do it. So the simple understanding in Shulchan Aruch would be, it's every shutfus is 50-50, right? Why is that? Because you make a cheshbon. If I put in $750,000 and you put in $250,000, it's because we agreed mechatchila. I'm going to do less work than you, so I put in more money. You're going to do more work. You're going to put in less money. So that's why the profits are shared equally. What happens if it's, let's say, in other places, if the minig hamokim is there, doesn't go like that, if there's no specific understanding that the profits are divided equally, but rather divided according to percentages, of how much you invest, and it goes according to how much you invested. Then there's a discussion, if there's an argument, Chuvas Harosh, if there's an argument how much you're supposed to get from the Rosh or Rashba, how much you're supposed to get from the division of property, from the division of profits. One person says, we only agreed you're going to get 25%. The other person says, we agreed you're going to get half, or we only agreed you're going to get 10%. There's a discussion about it. What's the minimum you could get away with? And who has to take a shvur? Later on in the siman, the next siman goes, if one person gets sick, or one person gets into trouble, and therefore he cannot work in the business, that he's still entitled to profits, because the shutfus is based on each one pulling their weight, like we said before. And this guy is not pulling his weight, so what's the din? And that's also the discussion later. What happens if somebody, the reason why he cannot work in the business is because he took one for the team, that's why he got arrested. Because the business was doing things that shouldn't have been done. And instead of the whole business going down, you have a bunch of partners, and one partner, they agreed between themselves, one partner is going to take the fall, and the other two are going to remain, so that person can no longer be part of the business. He can't work anymore, can't officially be part of the business, but he's still entitled to profit somehow or another or not, and that happens also in Dintaitis. And that is where pretty much introduction to the next few simanim. Also, there is also if a person gets gets a certain tax or a certain penalty waived, or gets a certain benefit, is it only for him? Is it for the shutfus? Specifically because, was it given to him because the moiches was happy with him, or friends with him, or because he did a favor to the moiches, or a personal thing? Could that mean that the discount will only apply to him, or the discount will apply to everybody else? Because he did it, when he does something, he does it on behalf of the shutfus. Also, how much when I become a shutuf with you, if it's a global shutfus, does that mean that every business that I am involved in from now going weiter is part of the shutfus, or only whatever is within the criteria of what we agree to? And that's why soon going to see there's a famous tshuva from the Tshuvas van Hogus and Mesher Sternbuch, two tshuvas. One where he says you make a clear shtar. I think he writes the Tshuvas van Hogus. The other one says when you make a shtar, make sure to have a bezin in there also to make sure you're not going to have any trouble. And he gives a bracha over there that if you have that, then you're going to have a peaceful partnership. We'll get to it soon. Anyways, so Siman Kuf Vav begins with how you become a shutuf. The first question is, will you become a shutuf by bedibur or not? Could somebody have a discussion and say, let's become partners and do this, and nobody puts in anything yet, and they didn't make a kinyan or not? The Tur starts by saying, talking is not enough to create a shutfus. The Mechaber paskins the same way. The Bach on the Tur right away points out that is a shut of the Rambam, there's a smag, Tshuvas Agyonim. Obviously, he says those are chaylik, the Mordechai name of the Maram Rothenburg, and name of Rabbeinu Tam, that dibur is enough for it, and even without a kinyan, as opposed to what the Tur holds that you need a kinyan. The question is, does it work? What does it mean that a shutfus ein nigmar bedibur? Does that mean on the past, does that mean on the future? That means two people decided they're becoming shutfim, they talked about it, and they went and they did some form of business transaction. One of them did a business transaction, both of them did a business transaction, whatever it is, and there was only dibur, there was no kinyan, there was no financial investment. Could and then afterwards one of them got a big windfall. Could the other one come and say, I want profits on the past, or I want profits for the future? So that's what the Bach over here points out, that according to the Mordechai, it brings the name of Amar Rottenburg and the name of Rabbeinu Tam, that Bedibur works, that works also for profits going weiter. What about profits going retroactively? So the Prisha says clearly that even according to the Shitta that Dibur does not work, if based on this Dibur there was profits that were made, then retroactively a person could say a person is entitled to half of the profits. The only nafkamina between Bedibur or Bekinyan is, could you be chayzer or not? That means, is it a permanent shutfus, or is it a like a poya, like a shliach, like a sachir, like a schiris, that you only for that specific transaction or not? The Prisha says that it goes for the previous, whatever was done previously. You can't come after there was a big profit and say, hey, we did the shutfus only bedibur, and therefore you're not entitled to anything. The same thing Knesset Agdela says that, the Matashimon says that. But the Knesset Agdela also says, well, there is a Marashdam that says that no, sorry, I mixed up. The Prisha holds that you could say that you don't have to give any profits for the retroactively. I mixed up the two opinions, sorry. The Prisha, the Knesset Agdela, and Matashimon all say that you cannot, that you're not entitled to profits from previously. And because it doesn't work with Dibur. The Marashdam, which Knesset Agdela brings, he says no, it does work for previous, it doesn't work for going weiter. And that is how the Nesivus also paskins. And the reason of the Nesivus, he says that in דיני Shluchim later on, which is the hemshech to these simonim, will be explained that if one person, a meshaleach, tells us shliach, go buy something for us, and he went and he purchased it, not the meshaleach, not the shliach could say, now la'atzmi konisi, I did it for myself, and therefore nobody could change from it. Therefore, same thing over here, even though it was bedibur, you can't go on what was done. You can't claim retroactively and not share the profits. Why? Because you purchased it for the purpose of the shlichus, right? When you're a shliach, you purchased it al das, that is going to be for you and for the meshaleach. Same thing over here in shutfus. When you purchase something after the dibur, you purchase it with the intention that it's going to be for the shutfus, and therefore you have to split it. And he claims that that's what the Nesivus claims, that's what the Taz holds also. However, if you read the Taz, it doesn't make sense that the Taz would hold like that. Punkt verkehrt, the Taz holds differently. The first Taz says that the reason why Eina shutfus nigmar bedibur is because I would have thought that it's like a shliach. Kamashma, it's not like a shliach. It comes in the Nesivus and says from the Taz it's mashma that it is like a shliach, and it doesn't make any sense. Fine, the Mishpat Shalom, and we're soon going to see another, the Avnei Choshen, who has an issue with this understanding with the Nesivus. This Nesivus is Avnei Choshen we're going to get to again later, when we get later to the Siman. Mishpat Shalom discusses this, the Marsham. Mishpat Shalom brings a Shivas Tzion and Ois Deshe, that they're both mashma like the Nesivus, and he says, but the Zechir La'aroin, it's mashma like the Prisha. It means that you cannot receive the profit going retroactively. The Erech Shai brings the Divrei Chaim. That asks a question in the Nesivus, that you cannot compare a shliach to a shutif. Then comes the Avnei Choshen. The Avnei Choshen says, I don't understand, like I mentioned to you, the Avnei Choshen says, I don't understand how you could say that the Taz holds like that the Taz is right in the Sivis. The fact that the Taz started the Siman with this is because he saw that he wanted to clarify to you, don't you make the mistake of thinking that it is like a shliach. It's rather shutfim are different. And the Avnei Choshen explains why is a shliach different than a shutef when it comes to this. Why by a shlichus do you say that you cannot retract if you go and buy something for both? By shutfim, if it was bedibur, you could still change your mind and say la'atzmi konisi, and you're not sharing the profit. He says the reason is like this. If I tell you, I am the shaleach and you're the shaleach, and I tell you, go buy this for the shutfus, and you would have not bought this product if not for me telling you to go ahead and buy it for us. So then, it's clear that you became my shliach to purchase this for the purpose of the shutfus. So therefore, you can't go afterwards and say, la'atzmi kanisi. But when you become a shutef, and we say shutef b'dibur, shutef stam, let's become partners, not specific product, specific thing. Let's become partners, and there was no kinyan, and there was no specific decision made. So obviously, if I went ahead and I bought something, unless proven otherwise, the default is that I bought it for myself. And he says, and that is clear from דיני shlichus over there in Siman Kuf Pei Gimel, where a person is sent to purchase something. It's over there, it's talking about a specific product being sent to purchase by the Meshaleach, a specific product. And therefore you could say, therefore over there you can't retract, but over here it's a general shutfa, so you cannot go and change it. And the Avnei Choshen says that even though the Mishpat Shalom brings different opinions, Mishpat Shalom wasn't machriya, it's pretty clear from the way the Mishpat Shalom builds his presentation of this topic that he holds also like the Nesivis, that he holds also that you cannot compare, not like the Nesivis, you cannot compare a shliach to a shutef in this matter. Now what happens if the minhag amokim is to do, or the minhag of this business is that you become shutfim bedibur and not bechsav, not bekinyan, not anything like that. You have the Sefer Dvar HaMishpat, which is the son or the grandson of the Knesset Agdela, and he over there brings that it works. Dvar HaMishpat. I forgot the name of the person. Of Menachem and of Mordechai. He's a descendant of the Knesset Agdela. And the Knesset Agdela is the son of the Mata Shimon. So Dvar HaMishpat says that it works, and he brings certain opinions that also hold that it works. And he brings from the Sefer Elef Kesef that this only works if both parties agree that there was such a dibur, that there was such a discussion that they become shutfim, or that there's eidim. But if there's no haidah that there was a dibur between them, there's no haidas baldin, and there is no eidim, you can't use the minhag to impose on the other person to split the money. Now, the Dvar HaMishpat, when he says that it works if there's such an agreement between the parties, that's also mentioned in his grandfather, great-grandfather, Sefer Knesset Agdela. That also works if that's the minhag in the place, and that Adbaz also holds like that. And if you look in the Pischei Tshuva, Sifkat and Gimel, he brings a Chasam Sofer, that from that Chasam Sofer is mashma that when it comes to Dinei Shutfis, whatever the minhag is, that's what goes. And even though he's not talking about dibur, but you could apply it across the board to anything that has to do with minhag. Now, does this din of dibur that the Mechaber says dibur doesn't work for shutfas, does it apply for everything in the shutfas or only the beginning of the shutfas? What happens if they're already shutfim? Does every time that they have to make a certain deal, a certain thing, do they have to make another kinyan? Or is the kinyan only in the beginning and that kinyan stays afloat and stays in power until otherwise changed. So the Maharik in Siman Chof says that the Kinyan, according to the Rambam and the Mechaber, the Kinyan is only, it's not, obviously not the Mechaber because the Maharik was before, but the Shitta of the Maharik is that this din that you need Kinyan is only for Tchilas HaShutfus, not for any other Tanoim that are continuing of the Shutfus. And that is how the Erech Lechem writes on the Mechaber. He brings the Maharik and he says, this Dibur is only for the beginning of the Shutfus. And the Chasam Sofer seems like he implies the same thing. But if you look in the Beis Yosef, we could understand the Beis Yosef says that you need a Kinyan for going weiter. The Knesset Agdoila and Agois Beis Yosef Oislam Etes over here makes some kind of peace deal between the Maharik and the Beis Yosef, and shouldn't be such a big stira. And he says that the Maharik and the Beis Yosef are not really disagreeing. When the Maharik says you don't need a new Kinyan and Dibur is enough, is for conditions that are connected to the first business deal. So you made a Kinyan on this business venture. And then now you have to make a specific discussion, a specific change, a specific condition, a specific modification. For that you don't need a new Kinyan. But if they're Shutfim and this deal they made a Kinyan for and that deal is done. Now they want to do a new deal, but they're still Shutfim. So for the new deal you have to make a new Kinyan. You can't have one Kinyan in the beginning which stays for all further the Knesset Hagdoila. Hagois Beis Yosef Oislam Etes makes this differentiation. He says the Maharik and the Beis Yosef are not disagreeing, but rather the Maharik is talking about for the same business deal. The Beis Yosef is talking, well, the Mashmas of Beis Yosef is about a new business deal. You still need a new Kinyan. There's a Erech Shai on Siman Ayin Aleph, not over here, which he says, he throws at Tzarich, he says, I'm not sure, could be that if the Shutif gives the other Shutif Ne'emanus Kevei Trei to do business deals, does you still need new Kinyanim for new ventures, or because he gave him Ne'emanus to do everything, he also joined with him on anything that he's going to do down the line, using in a Tzarich Iyon. The Aruch HaShulchan and Sifkat and Daled, he understands the Beis Yosef a little bit different in Sif Daled, and he says that the Nekuda of the Beis Yosef is that any condition which is negea to the Ikar HaShutfus, that means to the crux of the business deal. Are you going to pay us? He doesn't give examples, but if you're going into purchasing a building, and there's a discussion, are you going to pay $5 million for it? You're going to pay 5.5. Are you going to buy it? Are you going to buy 10 units? Are you going to buy 12 units? Certain things are negea to the ikar of the business, that needs a Kinyan. Or anything which is arum, you don't need a Kinyan for, which examples would be, if are you going to use this lawyer, you're going to use that lawyer, you're going to buy on a Tuesday, you're going to buy on a Thursday, things that are not negea to the ikar of the shutfus, for that you don't need a Kinyan. Each of these details creates big nafkaminas when it comes to shutfus. If there is no minhag medina to do it, or there is no contract, if there was a Kinyan made, and then there are other deals that were made, or other parts of the deal that were made as part of this, could one, and it went sour, or could one shutuf say, there was no Kinyan, keep the loss for yourself or not? Now, there's a shutfus is be'etzem a davar shaloi bala olam. Yeah, and there's a question how the kinyanim work or whatever, but that's in Sif Gimel. There's a discussion about kinyan be'davar shaloi bala olam. Some shutfusin are mamish davar shaloi bala olam. We're going to invest in something. Some shutfusin are to purchase something which is bala olam. And the Ravachim are Shalei Bala Olam, but they're based on something which is Bala Olam. We're not going to get into it now. It's more, we're going to get to it when we get to Sif Gimel. Now, the Mechaber holds that you need a Kinyan for Shutfus. We just mentioned it. Mechaber says, therefore, when it comes to coins is metaltalin. Metaltalin, you can't do a kinyan chalipin, and therefore shutfus doesn't work, even if you do a kinyan, even if you do a shtar, even if you have edim, even if you have edim, a shtar with edim, that each one's committing to bring money, still doesn't work until there is some kind of action done with the actual money. And what is it? So the Mechaber says, put all the money of the shutfus goes into a bag, the full amount. They have to buy a building for $1 million, put $1 million into the bag, and both of them are makbiyah it. There's the whole discussion if you makbiyah together, makbiyah each one is makbiyah separately. Well, I'm not going to get into it. Some people say the yesh emin that if you do a meshiche in moment chaveirei, it means each one does a meshiche of the other person's money. And then the Mechaber says, v'yesh misha oimer, that even if they just began together to do purchasing, to do business, that is enough to start to kick off the shutfus. Before we get into how it works, let's first discuss why a shtar, if a shtar works, and why the shtar doesn't work or does work. The smeh brings to the levush. Now, what shtar doesn't work? Only a generic shtar. A shtar that says, we two agree that we're going to become partners. But if you have a shtar which says that you're mekabel b'chedem b'shvua, that we're going to become shutfim, we're not going to violate the shutfus, and we're going to do everything together, then that works, and neither of them could change their mind and back out of the shutfus. That is what the smeh brings. Ploini uploini heskimu li yoy shutfim. ועל זה בנו על החוסם. חסים אז ידינו תויד עלינו שהסכמנו להיות שותפים ביחד. ועל זה בנו על החוסם, היום י"ז סיוון, פויקילס קדש ברוקלין. נאום. That's a generic shtar. Then if you have one with a shvua, which one's nishba, zachelim, etc., the lavush, the smeh brings from the lavush, then it works. The Taz says a shvua doesn't work, chedim doesn't work. You have to have a yischayvus. Each one says, I am mischayev to you, in the shtar, if I have a shtar that says I have a yischayvus to you to do it, then it does work, but a chedim does not work, because the idea of a shtar, for a shtar to work, the whole concept of a shutfus is the commitment of each one to the other one to do what they have to do for the shutfus. So if there's no schayvus, just a shvur that I'm not going to do something, otherwise it's not enough. It's not enough to create a shutfus. And the Sivis Paskin like a Taz, not like a smeh. The Pamoyne Zov goes into a discussion on this matter to explain what is the crux of the argument between the Taz and the smeh. What's the difference between a shvur and a schayvus when it comes to this matter? So he says, he says, be'etzim, you could explain that there is no disagreement between the Taz and the smeh. Yeah, the Taz says that a chedim and a shvua doesn't work, but a schayvus works. What's this Taz's problem with the smeh? That we have proof from later on in Shulchan Aruch that taka shvua is not like a kinyan. So therefore, a shvua cannot create a shutfus. But at the same time, you cannot go against the shvua. So you are bound by your shvua to fulfill what you did. And therefore, you have to stick with it. But it's not that you became a shutef with a kinyan. It doesn't work like a kinyan. The shtar with a shvua doesn't create a shutfus because there was no kinyan. It only creates on you a Torah obligation that you cannot walk away from this shutfus. And that's what the Taz holds, that you cannot use a shtar with a shvua. A shvua cannot be used to create a new shutfus in Elam Hazeh. But a shibud, but a schayvus works. And the Pamoin Zov brings from the Migdal Oiz on the Rambam that yes, his chayvus works because there's a shibud aguf. A shibud aguf happens over here. You enslave yourself to your partner, and that works.
What's the structure of those chayvus? Your documents written that they're chayav?
Each one is mechayev esatzmai, v'zgufay meshabed esatzmai to create for this thing. And the Pamoin Zov brings that also from the Mishkanas Haroyim and from the Mishcha de Rabvasa.
It only happens in a document? As chayvus is made as a document, or it could be made as chayvus is made in a star?
A star with his chayvus. If there's otherwise there's no proof that there's ever a chayvus.
The Taz issue is not with a star per se, it's with a shua or a chayr.
Yeah, so shua chen doesn't work. Now the Ulam HaMishpat mentions that a star doesn't work at all. It doesn't go into discussion if it has a shibud aguf, doesn't have a shibud aguf, has a chelim, doesn't have a chelim. Some people understood the Ulam HaMishpat that mean that it's obviously without his chayvus, but lav dafka, that's what it means. But he just says a star doesn't help at all. And even if they went afterwards and they made a business deal based on this star, if one wants to change his mind and walk away from the shutfas going weiter, he could walk away. Even if they started the shutfas based on this star. Because a star does not create a shutfas. The Ulam HaMishpat. No, that's how the Oitzar Mishpat understands him, but lav dafka, that's what it means. The Ulam HaMishpat says a star doesn't work bichlal, even if you operated based on the star. The Oitzar Mishpat comes and tells you that obviously the Ulam HaMishpat is talking about only a star without a chayvus, or without a shua. And I'm telling you that I don't agree with that explanation of the Oitzar Mishpat. Why? Because the Oitzar HaMishpat is operating based on the premise that a star with a chayvus or a shua does work. But it's not so. Because our opinions that hold that a star even with his chayvus doesn't work, and a shibud doesn't work, and who's that? You have the Mata Shimoin brings opinions that even with a star is chayvus it doesn't work. Elamai dafka shvua and the chelim work not mitzad shutfus but mitzad a shvua. Because you can't violate your own shvua. The Mishpat Shalom on Sif Zayin, not over here, brings the tshuva of the Rashba that a shibud aguf, even a shibud aguf doesn't work. It's chayvus. That's what it writes in Sif Zayin. And the Mishpat Shalom in Sif Aleph, in Sif Zayin brings the Rashba. In Sif Aleph he brings the Marash Dam. That the Marash Dam brings the Yesh Oimrim, Yesh Mishoimer, that even a shvua doesn't work. When you take a shvua, it's as if you said nothing. It's a shvua levatol. It's a shvua you can't fulfill. Elamai, the Marash Dam himself passing that shvua does work, like the smeh. And it seems like the Mishpat Shalom holds that. But Stama, Ishta, even with this chayvus, the Rashba clearly says it doesn't work. So shtar is not enough to create a shutfus. The question is, shtar with something, could it create a shutfus? So from the Smez, mashma shtar with a shvua does create a shutfus. Then Pamoin Zov says that a shtar with a shvua doesn't create a shutfus, just creates a obligation mitzad God, that you shouldn't violate your shvua. And the Taz holds that a shtar with a shvua doesn't help, but a shtar with a chayvus does work. Mishpat Shalom brings you this chayvus aguf, a shivud aguf doesn't work. So, Makitzer, a shtar lav dafka works. Yeah. What? Only what? Can't hear you. Right, if it's not minhag everything works, yeah. Now, why does Kinyan not work for metaltalin? Because for mois, because metaltalin is not nikne. With shtar and the sudar, right? Can't be kind of metaltalin, not with a shtar, not with a sudar. Pischei Choshen brings Perek Yudalef Order 5 that a Kinyan chotzer and a Kinyan agav works for acquiring metaltalin and therefore should work for a shutfis on mois. But the Knesset Agdela, who is 400 years before the Pischei Choshen, the Knesset Agdela's test, says that a Kinyan Agav does not work, and he proves it from a Bach. So now, and we have basically three options that the Mechaber, like we told you, have three options the Mechaber discusses how to make a shutfus when it comes to money. And soon, then we're going to circle back to how we deal with it today when there's money in the bank. Yeah. Well, first one is that each one puts his money into a bag together, and they both pick it up together. Second opinion is that each one.
This works according to everyone.
Can't hear you.
This works according to everyone.
Yeah. Yes, the first one. The Yesh Omrim that Mashiach also works. And Yesh Mishomer, you do the business together, yeah? Now, let's go discuss the first one, the Hagbah and Mashiach. First two. The Smell over here says, go look in the Prisha, and when you look in the Prisha, and he says in the Prisha, he also explains, summarizes over here, and the Prisha explains a little bit more, that the Kavanah is that each one does Hagbah in the other person's, Magbia the other person's money, or, second opinion, does Mashiach in the other person's money. But not b'toiras kinyan that you want to acquire the other person's money. Because if the Uven does a Mashiach or Hagbah to acquire Shimon's money, and Shimon does a Mashiach or Hagbah to acquire Uven's money, it becomes Chalipin, and again doesn't work. Well, it's a different. That's how the kinyan that each one does. And the Sivis right away asks in it. The Sivis says, I don't understand how this works according to the Rambam. According to the Rambam, shutfus and davar shlei b'laylam, you have to have a kinyan in the guf hachayfetz. But otherwise, the guf hachayfetz is not mishtabed, and therefore there's no shutfus. So therefore, how does this kinyan work? So the Siva says, no, it's not a kinyan in the guf hachayfetz when you do this money. By each person in Mashiach or Hagbah and the other person's money, he is essentially being meshabed himself to become the schiroi, the employee of the other person. It's not a shibud aguf, it's a schiroi. Not like a smell that holds it as a shibud aguf. The Avnei Choshen comes and says, I don't understand what the Sivis is saying. He says there's no shibud aguf through this kinyan, you're not acquiring the money, so what actually happens? Then the Avnei Choshen gives an interesting explanation. He says, when I make the Mashiach or the Hagbah and the other person's money, or the money together, then the money that is here becomes our money, and therefore the revachim that will come from this money is our money. Is our revachim to be split. So if you have revachim that are going to be split between us, so we became a shutfim for revachim. So b'derech agav grore, we dragged into it all the other conditions of the shutfis, all came piled in together with this revachim. Because the revachim are ours both, so therefore the tanoim are attached to it. Exactly. So he says, but the money that generates is revachim, each one of us put our hands on it, and therefore, when this money is going to go into something, it's going to create profit. That profit is going to belong to the people who put in the money. So and that would be only for that money. So he says, agav, this, it's not the real agav. I'm saying by becoming this revachim, all the conditions attached to it also work. Yeah. But he stays in Tzarechiyun. The Taz holds that this Mashiach doesn't work. Not like a Smeh. Mashiach doesn't work, b'chlal, each one being moishech the other person's money. Only Hagbah works. Paimon Nezav also says that not Hagbah works, not Mashiach. Elamai, the Paimon Nezav brings from the Bani Chaye, the Paimon Nezav is of Katan Gimel, the Bani Chaye brings from Moirei Tzedek, from the Sefer Moirei Tzedek, that the only time Mashiach would work is if you have such a big sack of money that you cannot pick it up together, or each one independently, that depends on whichever opinion you're going to follow, then over there Mashiach works. Yeah. But he said, we're talking about does Mashiach work or only Hagbah works, it's a different discussion. It's moving to the next thing, yeah? And this Mata Shimon holds no, Hagbah or Mashiach both work. Now let's go, what happens when you have the money in the bank? You can't do Mashiach, you can't do Agbah, yeah? There's an interesting Shas Chuvas Churas Shai, Siman Shin Tzadik Tes. Two Shutfim have money in the bank, and now they decide they want to bring in a third Shutaf. So now, how much is each? How does it work? We were 50-50 partners. Each one of us has put in $100,000. You have $200,000 in the bank. And we did a kinyan, whatever it is. It comes with the sack and everything else, and we carry the sack together to the bank. We want to bring a third shutaf into it down the line. Now the business is worth more, right? Now each one of us has $500,000. We want to bring in a third shutaf, or a third shutaf wants to come in. We tell them, well, you have to put in $500,000, and then each one, now the business is going to be worth 1.5, and each one of us is going to have a third. Does it work to just deposit the money? The Chura Shai says no. You have to have either that all the money is given b'maymat shloshtam, or you have to make some sort of a kinyan, because just giving money and depositing it is not enough. Especially since putting it into the bank, the majority of the money of the bank is anyways out for loan, so it's not ba'olam, it's just a chayv. However, the Tshuvas Vanhogis Chele Gimel Siman Shin Lamed Hey Tzaref Steinbuch from Eretz Yisrael Av Bezdin Aveda Charedes today. He says today the minig is that you make a shutfus with a shtar, and the minig is that you put in money into the bank, and therefore it works. Rav Batzri, Rav Bezdin of Yerushalayim, has a set of Sfarim called דיני, 4 volumes that was written for Balabatim, very interesting sefer, Chelik Beis, Shar Revi Perek Aleph Sa'if Beis. Says, you're going into a shutfus, a Eitza Tova, make a very clear contract with every condition and everything that's going to be there to prevent problems. And also things, make sure that he says a Rav should write it, because that way you have certain things that al pi halacha might be questionable. Do you need a kinyan, do you not need a kinyan? I guess you make a shtar with all the kinyanim, with all the conditions, you're good to go. And the Tshuvas Vanhogis and Chele Gimel Siman Tov Lamed Hey says that, that's why I said you should write a clear shtar, and you should add over there a name of a bezdin that's agreed upon by both, and then you're not going to have any problems. Not going to have any problems going weiter. That is regarding.
How does the shtar work? You said before the shtar doesn't work.
Yeah, but if the minig is to make a shtar, the minig is that you put money in. No, that's additional. It's nothing to do with anything. That's just practical. Since I'm discussing by writing a shtar, Rav Batzri says make sure to write a shtar, and Rav Steinbuch says add to it also the name of a business. You're not going to have any issues later. Now, there's another discussion about money in a bank, and that is not money in a bank, but investing. There's a minchas pitim on this siman. He brings in the name of the Ois Desha, Siman Mem Vav. If you have a business deal that needs an investment of $1,000, not a big thing, $1,000 investment. Each one gave 100. 2 partners gave 100 each, and now you have 800 left. Could one person be koi for the other person to give 800 to become a shutaf? Because a shutaf, you have to purchase it, you need 1,000. So does that each one put the first 100, does that impose on them to put in the rest of the money? And he says in Tzarechiyun. The Minchas Pitim says the Ois Desh says in Tzarechiyun. Each one to give another 400, yeah. But in the Sivis, later, in Bi'urim Sivkot Lamed Beis, says, clearly, there's no shaila. It says, without a kinyan on the whole amount of money, the whole original 1,000 that you need, there's no shutfus, and nobody could be kaif for anybody to put in any money. In the Sivis, Bi'urim Sivkot Lamed Beis. And whoever wants to be mevatel could be mevatel. The only way you cannot be mevatel is if all the money was put into the investment, and then they started working with the money, and they started investing, and there was a loss, and you needed more money, then you could be kaif for the other person to do it. Or that you agreed milchatchila that each one has to put in 100, and that was take, or both together are going to put in 100. And that is the full amount that's needed. And then afterwards, the business, you needed more money. Not that the original was 1,000, you only put in part. The original was 100, and you fully funded the deal. And then afterwards it became, you need more. Then because I was already a kinyan on the full amount they agreed to in milchatchila, then you could be koy for them to become shutfim. But if milchatchila, the original amount was higher, and you didn't put in the whole money, and there was no kinyan made on the whole money, then there is no, you cannot impose on the other person to do further funding. Today, when you make shutfas and when you make shtaris, a lot of times you're going to buy a building, and each one puts in a certain amount of money, and you're going to get the rest of it from the bank, because that's how you buy a building. You're only going to put in the down payment, and it's fully funded from both. It's not the full amount of money. The cha'ira, that also works because they already put in the full amount that you actually need, the down payment plus closing costs, whatever it is, 20% of what the deal is. And you could be careful for the other person to give more if need be.
If the meaning is to do a down payment, then they're considered shutfim right away?
Yeah.
Why?
Because because that's all you're doing. You don't need more than that. The rest is coming from the bank. The deal is $5 million, the building. From that, you need a total of 20% for down payment and closing costs, yeah? $1 million. Each one gave $500,000. That's enough. Huh? You wrote a star. They're giving money plus the star. There's the situmta of it, yeah. The third option that the Shulchan Aruch brings, a yesh mishaymer, that if they were already nishtatif, they were started to misasek together in the money, then the shutfus kicks off already. So the Smer right away says, it means that A, they put all their money together, but they didn't do the Mashiach or the Agbah, and B, they started using the money for business ventures together. Then they cannot go, neither of them could go and say, I want to back out of the shutfus. But if they did not put all their money together into one bag, and rather each one started doing independently business, then they can still change their mind. The Taz disagrees and says, no, you don't need both. You don't need A, that all the money should be put in together, and B, that there should be a joint business. They should start working on this business deal together. Rather, either or. If they didn't start doing the business yet, the investment yet, but they already put in all the money into a bag together, that's already enough to become shutfim for this business deal. The Iruv Mammon already helps. Or if they started doing if they started being misasik in this shutfus, even if they did not put their money in together, it's already enough, which creates a situation that if they agree, they're going to each one put in $100,000 into this business deal, to buy whatever it is, certain products. And then each one went and they each one used their $100,000 and they bought together, or they bought stuff for the shutfus, one bought for the shutfus, then it already becomes a shutfus even though they didn't put in the money, together. The Paimoinei Zov over here explains that it's not so. Just he splits the two. He says mixing the money together is not enough because there's never kinyan or shibut from one to another. He says just because I put money into a bag it became something. I put money into a bag, I'll take the money out of the bag. Nothing happened out of this money. There's no kinyan on the money. But once you start working together, even if it's only one person's money, it's already enough. It's a big chiddush. One person's money is already enough to start it. But he doesn't say for sure. He says, Nil and use daiti lafi shah. As of now, that's moil. But he never wrote something else, so that's his maskana.
They mix it and use the amount of one guy's money?
They didn't mix it. They decided to become shutfim.
So what's the significance of mixing according to
Huh?
What's the significance of mixing? No significance?
Against mixing? It says nothing.
The significance is mixing itself. Does basically does nothing?
Nothing. Huh? According to Panizav, yeah. The Pesach Tshuva brings from the Shivas Tzion that, yes, according to the Taz, working together is enough to create a shutfus without joining the money together, but for that you need both people to work together. You can't have one person putting in money and the same person also working, and the other person coming then and saying, hey, we agreed to be shutfim, I didn't work with you yet, and I didn't put in money into the joint pile, but I have the taz. Sasku yachad, we spoke that we're going to do it together. So no, that's too far. You want to say it, you don't have to put the money in together into the same bag? I agree, fine. But the sasku yachad has to be mamish to working together. It can't be one person.
Not that one money and one sasik.
Huh?
Not that one.
No, that's mamish a shutfus. Agreed to.
They weren't hired yet. The other guy didn't need the money.
The other guy's not supposed to. If one person didn't bring b'chalal money, say if one person brings money and pays and works, then obviously he did it for himself. He didn't just hire a shutaf to sit over there and become a leech on him.
One should have brought part of the money and gave it to the other guy started working with it.
Yeah, then it's a shutfus. Yeah.
Even though they weren't hired money.
Yeah, because that's what they agreed to in Chatchila, yeah?
No, they agreed that they're both going to give money.
So then it becomes an argument. According to the Tzmeh, it doesn't work. According to the Taz, it might work, yeah. The Knesset Agdela and the Dvar Mishpat, both of them say that even though the Mechaber says Yesh Mishaymer, there's nobody disagrees on the Mechaber, so therefore there is the halach is like this one, that it works according to everyone. And actually the Nesivis in Biurim Sifkot and Aleph says that nobody disagrees with it. Even the Rambam who says that you have to Mashiach or Agba, he would hold that if Nisasku Yachad, it's already enough to effectuate the shutfus, and he explains therefore the machlekes between the taz and the smeh is only going forward but not going back. That means the machlekes in the taz and the smeh, do you need iruv momen or not, or do you need iruv momen, or sasku yachad is enough, is only a machlekes on chazore from the shutfus going weiter, but not on the Revachim on the past. And the Sivas holds in the Revachim on the past, for sure there are Shutfim. Elamai, according to the Revachim on the past, even the Smeh would hold that there was no Iruv, but they did the Sasko Yachad. It's already enough to create a Shutfus. Because what they bought was bought for the Shutfus, like we said before in what the Sivas says. And that is what the Erech Shai, we mentioned Erech Shai already, brings the Divrei Chaim, disagrees in the Sivus, and says that even for the past, you also don't have to give him Revachim if there were Nesasik Yachad and there was no Iruv Momen. And the Erech Shai says that it's not so. The Divrei Chaim didn't understand the Ramban, and therefore the Nesivus is right, because the idea is, the Nesivus' idea, that when you nishtat fu yachad and you went and did something together and you purchased something together, even if it's not iruv mammon, it came from one person, but the purchasing was done, then it's like one person became the shliach or the sachir of the other person. So even if there's no shutfus on the future, on the past there is already shutfus, and you can't change, you can't retract. The Matar Shimon doesn't go that far. He says you want to have that nishtat fu yachad without iruv momen should work for back purchases that were done already. You can't go that far and say that it goes just by talking or just by working together. There has to be that the shutaf was there at the time, at least. If not both gave money, that the one shutaf says was there at the time, and they went together to buy it. They both signed on the contract to purchase it. Not that one person went and one person did all the work, and one person put in all the money, and one person signed it, and then the other person says, well, I told you that I'm going to become a shutaf with you, so give me part of the profits. That's not enough. Now, just want to mention one more thing. With this, we'll finish. The Dvar HaMishpat that I mentioned before that says, like Knesset Agdela say that there's no chaylik on the Mechaber, and therefore the halach is like him. The Dvar HaMishpat actually brings an interesting, from the Pri Haaretz, Sefer Pri Haaretz, and this is not the Pri Haaretz that we know about, this is the Sefer Pri Haaretz Choshen Mishpat, Chelik Beis Siman Tes, that he brings the name of the Perach Shushan, that since there is a machlokes, Yesh Mishaymer, and he found one shitta which disagrees with it, therefore comes the Kimli card. And Mochzer could say Kimli against this Mechaber, because the Mechaber didn't say it. It's not a Kimli against the Mechaber, it's a Kimli against the Yesh Mishaymer and the Mechaber. Mechaber says B'loshen Yesh Mishaymer, and we found somebody who disagrees with the Mechaber. The Mechaber wants to give you the out to be able to say Kimli if you're the Mochzer.
Who can take him?
The muhzak.
Who's the muhzak?
Depends on the case. Whoever has the money, whoever has the profits, whoever has the profits. And if the person who did the work was a shaitan enough to write it in both people's names, both of them are muhzakim. Nobody could say kimli. With that we conclude. Next year, Mr. Hashem will be on Wednesday.